Yo, it's ODB, and we're going to look at September 2004 Truckin. Pretty cool cover, even if you're not into lifted vehicles. Get an H2 with a nice background there. And this is where my eyes go right here. This chassis is forever etched in my mind. I remember reading this issue around the time we were redoing my S10, which ended up getting redone again down the road. But this thing right here was really the motivation for me in a lot of ways due to the high detail in this build. So I want to take a look at it. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. And we also do a weekly podcast going on 8 years strong. Check it out. Search OLP via any podcast app. So here you see on page 76, you got this crazy thing that they did, which was featuring a chassis with an indoor photo shoot. This thing does not get the credit it deserves, maybe because if you weren't subscribed to Truckin, and this is kind of before social media was really blowing up, of course you had Street Source and things like that, but just truly an amazing chassis we're going to look at here in a second. And then you can see the H2 with the desert landscape there. Wes Allison. Now I mentioned Wes a good amount because he contributed so much, including this feature that we're about to look at with this chassis. So it was dubbed framed. And I remember taking photos or scanning this years ago. It really, again, was huge motivation for me, just trying to scope out what other people were doing in terms of the detail. This was a 2000, believe it or not, an NBS, new body style GMC. So think, Silverado. And there's a lot of detail in this thing. If we jump over, we'll come back here in a second. But when you get over here is where they talk about the guy's name was Darrell Copeland from Clovis, California. And it talks about some of the builders there, Ray Wrinkle, owner of Pronto Fab in Fresno. So pretty cool stuff. The name is not prevalent here anywhere in the feature, so I wanted to make sure we called that out and gave credit to this guy. Now, presumably this thing somewhere, maybe, I don't know that it ever got finished. Maybe it did. I don't know how it would have without me knowing. But let's take a look at the chassis. It's all paint. You talk about doing LS swaps, or obviously with this, what came in this thing, the new body style trucks. I mean, look at all the detail on it. Everything painted or chrome plated, all hard lined. Kind of a different bag setup, something that you just weren't seeing at that time. Most guys were doing kind of bag over axle. Crazy link setup with the shocks, kind of with the way they're mounted. Of course, you see all the detail on the rear end as well, and the gas tank polished back there. Something totally different. Again, Rob Ryder did the write-up on this. Wes Allison, we can see there in the top right, did the feature. Do you guys remember reading this? Do you know if this truck was ever finished? It just blew my mind that a new truck, so think about this is 2004, September, brand new truck blown apart, which was happening, but not being put back together with this amount of detail. I mean, this was just something of the time that was kind of unheard of. Now, granted, Mike Kaufman's OBS, First Street Trucks, absolutely, painted frames. Joe Musso's Toyota, I mean, certainly there was badass stuff, but a fairly new truck to this caliber really just was not seen in this era. The cool thing too was that Truckin, being that they had just such huge success during this era, they were willing to commit to do a full feature on a chassis. You can see there just all the detail that Wes Allison was able to kind of capture. And, these new trucks, oftentimes you couldn't ever imagine them being kind of a hot rod. I never could, especially when they were new trucks. I would think to myself, like, man, I can't even imagine that being a classic truck. And then 20 years goes by and it's like, dang, NBS is old school almost now. But when you look at this thing, the amount of detail in it, just insane. What do you guys think? You guys remember this one? This photo always got me here, seeing the hard lines going into the bags. Pretty cool stuff. And again, it was a lot of motivation for me, which Jimmy and Shane at Scraping Customs started my truck, and Jimmy finished it at Jimmy's Running Customs. Jimmy's the mastermind behind all the hard lines and stuff on my truck. But like seeing this, I was like, damn, dude, like this is something that I could imagine coming together in a mini truck. Pretty sick, man. What do you guys think of this thing? Framed, kind of a cool name for it. Of course, I love blue. So this is really one that stuck with me in my head, kind of etched in my mind. So there you go, September 2004 Truckin. I'm going to go ahead and flash up here. If you haven't subscribed, please click through. There'll also be a video if you want to check those out and let it run through. Much appreciated. We saw huge growth in 2002. So I'll go ahead and let you subscribe before we get out of here. We at ya. Salute to one of the dopest. Peace.